What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today we're taking a look at the Surface Studio from Microsoft. This is their very first all-in-one desktop computer. And the version I'm taking a look at here is the fully spec'd out model, which retails for $41.99. So this is a fairly high-end computer with a very specific audience in mind. But this is a really exceptional piece of hardware and design, and we're going to take a close look at it right now. So of course, this is a very expensive computer, and it does come with a very nice box. So the box itself does have some images highlighting its two main positions. The standard desktop view and the drafting position. Now, in order to unbox this, we do have to lay it flat. You'll see a little diagram at the top near the handle. Now, the first thing we'll have to do here is pull the tabs along the side so we can lift up the lid. Of course, to lift up the lid, you have to push in that handle. Once you lift up the lid, the first thing you'll see here is a lot of styrofoam and the computer itself, which is on this styrofoam pedestal. It looks like a giant tablet wrapped in plastic. Of course, we'll have to move this out of the way, but before we do that, you can see that it actually articulates. So it's in the drafting position when it's shipped, and all you have to do is lift it up out of the way and set it aside and get to the accessories that are also in the box. So we have three boxes to get out of the way. We have the keyboard and the mouse box at the top, so this is a long skinny box. We also have some paperwork which pulls out from the front of the box, and at the bottom of the box we'll find a triangular box that contains the power cable. The power cable itself is very smartly designed. It's actually designed to fit flushly with the back of the computer, so it's not just a standard power cable. The paperwork includes a few pamphlets, including a very glossy pamphlet highlighting some of the uses of the Surface Studio. Inside we'll find a much more practical user manual that explains how to connect it and how to power it on and many of the other features and ports. Now, getting to the accessory box, it comes with three accessories: the keyboard, the mouse, and the Surface Pen. So not included is the Surface Dial, which is a separate accessory. I also purchased this and it is coming later, and if you want to see that video, please let me know. So first up, we have the Surface Mouse, which is a fairly conventional mouse. It's all plastic with physical clicks for left and right buttons. We also have a scroll wheel, which unfortunately does not support side scrolling. At the bottom, we'll find a battery separator, so this prevents the batteries from making contact until you pull the tab. Now, another very cool detail here is that the battery cover is actually magnetic, so it's really easy to remove it and reinstall it. It's just a very slick design. Now, although it's nothing really fancy here, I actually really like this mouse. It has a really solid left and right click, which is very important, and the scroll wheel is very responsive and made of metal, so it feels very nice. Next up, we have the newest Surface Pen, which is designed to work with a variety of Surface products, including the Surface Studio. The pen itself is all aluminum, has a very nice rigid design, and does have a battery compartment, so it is powered. Now, you can remove this by twisting off the top of it, and you'll see that the battery just slides out. The battery itself is a quadruple A battery and should last about a year depending on your use. The pen itself is actually flat on one side, and that's because it can be magnetically attached to the side of the display on both the left-hand and right-hand side. Also along that side, which is integrated into the rubber strip that protects it from scratching the aluminum, is a button, which can be used in a variety of ways depending on the software you're using. Also at the top of the pen is a clickable button. This can be used as an eraser, but if you click it, this will also activate different features depending on how you have it programmed. So this can be configured under settings, but in the case of the Surface Studio, a single click actually brings up an action center. It allows you to activate apps that can take advantage of the Surface Pen. So that includes things like taking a screen grab or composing a virtual sticky note, which you can place anywhere on the desktop and it stays there persistently. Also included with the Surface Studio is this full-size keyboard. This is an aluminum keyboard, so it feels very nice and rigid. It also includes a full number pad along the right side and a ton of dedicated function keys for things like bringing up the action center, showing your desktop, and a ton of other standard features such as media controls, volume, brightness, as well as search. Now, just like the mouse, it also has a magnetic battery enclosure built into the stand in the back. And you can see inside we'll find two AA batteries pre-installed, and if you want to activate it, you just have to pull the tab. Also along the other side, you'll find a Bluetooth pairing button. The keyboard itself does feel a lot like the previous generation of the Apple keyboard, the one before the Magic Keyboard, with a lot more key travel, but it does feel a little more solid and less wobbly. Now, getting back to the computer itself, it is wrapped in lots of plastic, but they do make it very easy to remove. So the first thing I want to do here is remove the styrofoam block that cushioned the computer when it was laying in its drafting position. We also have some plastic covering the chrome along the hinge. This protects it from scratching, and it's very easy to remove. All you have to do is pull up on the tab and it unzips. This works on both the left and right sides. We also have lots of plastic covering that very thin display, and we'll find tabs on all four sides. That makes it easy to remove this. Of course, I'm going to be very meticulous here and pull off each side so I can remove the plastic in one sheet. And lastly, we have some plastic covering the base, and you do have to lift it up in order to get access to the tab. And otherwise, all I have to do is pull up and it pulls off in one sheet. So in terms of design, it's really stunning. It's all aluminum, chrome, and glass. The only plastic you'll find here is on the bottom of the pedestal, which is part of the cooling system. It also allows the computer to be moved around and repositioned without sliding across the table. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is boot it up for the first time, and you'll see that the power controls and the volume keys are along the lower right side, very much like a tablet, so it's kind of unusual to see that here, but it is really easy to access. Now the setup process does include configuring the Windows Hello feature, which allows you to use your face to log into your computer or to make purchases within the Microsoft Store. Now Microsoft spent a lot of time focusing on the display technology here. This is a very unusual display in a number of ways. This is a 28-inch pixel sense display with a 3:2 aspect ratio. The display itself is laminated to the glass, and the panel is very thin at 1.3 millimeters. According to Microsoft, that's the thinnest LCD monitor ever built. The enclosure itself is only 12.5 millimeters thick, so that's edge to edge. The entire back panel is a very thin 12.5 millimeters. So it's really impressive, and it's an aluminum enclosure, so it's nice and rigid and looks fantastic. Of course, this is a full touchscreen, which is also designed to work with the Surface Pen and Microsoft's Entreg technology. Now, this is not a 5K display, so we have a resolution of 4500 by 3000. That is better than 4K. That delivers a 192 pixel density. So that's not quite as sharp as the 5K display on the iMac. It is calibrated to the sRGB color spectrum as well as DCI-P3, and these are all things you can toggle right from the control panel. So you can quickly toggle between these color profiles right on screen, which is very handy, especially for people working with photography or video. And because we have this 3:2 aspect ratio, 28 inches is quite a bit bigger than a widescreen 27-inch monitor. So you have a lot more surface area, and I think it's a great aspect ratio for productivity, especially with this specific application. Now, the signature feature of this computer is that the display can articulate from a standard desktop view all the way down to a 20-degree drafting view, and you have lots of variable in between. And the hinge itself is called a zero gravity hinge, so it's very easy to use, and it's able to maintain a position so it doesn't move when you're interacting with the display. Now obviously the drafting position is really geared towards specific software or specific creative professionals that can take advantage of the sophisticated software that can use the Surface Pen. So like a lot of other modern styluses, the Surface Pen can detect pressure. So of course, if you want a lighter stroke or heavier stroke, all you have to do is lean a little harder on the pen tip. There's also a sketch app that has been included, which is a great way of sort of exploring the capabilities of the hardware here without having to buy some of the more expensive software. So this computer really can keep track of a lot of inputs, from your fingers to the Surface Pen to palm and arm rejection when you're leaning on the display. Now, unlike most all-in-one computers, the base itself actually houses the electronics. So this is what powers the display that it's attached to. So our CPU, the fans, even the speakers are all built into this aluminum enclosure. The enclosure is surrounded by vents. There are 3 fans in here, which are designed to keep it cool and quiet, although it is noticeably audible, especially since it sits right in front of you when you're using the computer. So it's definitely louder than most all-in-one computers I've used, like the iMac, which places all those electronics behind the display and facing away from the user. Now, I wouldn't say it's loud, but it's definitely noticeable and something that's a little disappointing to me as a user. So in terms of specs, this is the top-end model. So that gets me a Core i7 quad-core, which is a 6th generation processor with 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM. We also get NVIDIA's GeForce GTX 980M with 4 gigs of GDDR5 memory. We also get a 2 terabyte hybrid drive, which combines the speed of an SSD with the inexpensive storage of a hard disk drive. So these specs are not terribly impressive for such an expensive computer. In fact, the quad core is clocked at around 2.7 gigahertz, but we do get a lot of RAM here, which is useful for most of its primary apps. But it's pretty obvious that these specs are mostly designed for the small enclosure, but can keep up with the resolution and the primary software. So in terms of our Geekbench scores, it delivers around 4,400 on the single core score and almost 14,000 on the multi-core score. In terms of graphics, that comes in at around 86,000. Now that's actually less powerful than the 5K iMac I use for my main production. So if you look at those Geekbench scores, you can see there's a big difference, especially in terms of the single core performance and graphics performance. Now at the back of the base is all of our I/O, and the great thing here is that because it's at the bottom here, it's pretty easy to hide the wires, so the wires don't snake up to the display and become more visible like it is on the iMac. But the I/O is a little dated here. We do get 4 USB Type-A ports, which are USB 3, so we get USB 3 speeds, but we don't have Thunderbolt here. We do get a display output, so if you want to connect an external display, you do have that, but unfortunately no Thunderbolt in this case either. Of course, we get a 3.5mm headphone jack as well as an Ethernet port, and we do get an SD card slot, which is somewhat inconveniently placed, but that's not terribly unusual in computers like this. Now there is a really impressive set of speakers built into the base. They're stereo 2.1 speakers with Dolby audio, and it's really impressive. They're extremely loud with a good amount of range, and it's pretty immersive. Initially, it was actually kind of hard to pinpoint where the speakers were because it sounded like it was coming from around the display. So it is a really nice set of speakers. The only problem here is that as soon as you lower the display, the quality changes a bit. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. It does explain how to use the touch controls at the top, in addition to some of the voice commands you can use on this device. We also get a flyer that highlights some of the optional bases you can swap out, which includes both fabric and metal styles. Now if you look at the top center of the display, you'll see quite a bit going on here, including 2 cameras. One of them is a Windows Hello camera. So basically this is the face scanning camera that allows you to unlock the computer using your face, and it works pretty reliably. There's also a set of infrared LEDs that light up your face for that feature. There's also a 5 megapixel 1080p front-facing camera, which delivers fantastic quality. It's definitely better than something like the FaceTime HD camera on the iMac. We also get a set of dual microphones, and that's designed to work with the Cortana feature, so you can command your computer from across the room and reliably talk to it. Now this is a feature that's turned off by default, so you'll have to turn this on under Cortana settings. You can also train it to your voice, so not everybody can access this. And unfortunately, it only works if the computer is awake, not when it's sleeping. Now I do a lot of video editing on this computer and it works fantastic, so 4K projects with this large display look great and it seems to be able to keep up with it. It also goes without saying that this definitely is not a gaming computer, although it can keep up with some major new titles. But you'll have to scale back performance and you definitely can't game at the native resolution. But of course, I'm not the primary target for this computer. I really don't have a need for a touchscreen or a digitizer because I'm not that sort of creative professional. So if you can, there's a ton of benefits to having this large screen and this fantastic display technology. But it's also a really nice all-in-one computer. It's got a great touchscreen, a fantastic display with a lot of screen real estate for productivity. It's got a great audio system, but there are a few complaints that I have, and that includes the sound coming from the base, which is a little too loud. In fact, that means I can't use it in my studio because it makes too much noise for the microphone. It's also a little expensive for a computer with somewhat outdated specs and I/O, so it'd be nice to see these updated next year. But otherwise, if you are a creative professional that needs a touchscreen and a great digitizer, this is a fantastic option and you won't find anything else quite like it. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the Microsoft Surface Studio. If you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next video.